Under the fierce noon sun, the prairie shimmered like a sea of glass. Waves of golden grass bent beneath the wind, and from the distance came the faint, uneven rhythm of wooden crutches striking dirt. Lydia's breath trembled with every step. Dust clung to her hem, to her lashes, to the sweat streaking her pale face. She had not eaten since dawn, nor slept since the night she lost everything. The fire, the screams, the silence afterward. But she kept walking, driven by something as small and stubborn as hope. At the edge of the field stood a cabin, framed by wheat and solitude. Smoke rose from its chimney in thin, ghost-like curls. Lydia stopped, leaning on her crutches, her shoulders shaking under the weight of exhaustion and disbelief. The sun burned on her back. For a long moment, she only watched the door, the silence pressing heavy against her chest. Then, with what strength she had left, she whispered toward the cabin, "If kindness still lives in men, please let it live here." The door opened with a creak that startled the quiet. A tall man stepped out, his hat shadowing eyes the color of river rock. Harlan. His face was drawn from years of wind and solitude, lines etched deep by sun and silence. He looked at her first with suspicion, then with something quieter, something he didn't yet have the courage to name. His voice came rough, a voice not used to company. "You lost." Lydia swallowed, her throat dry. "I lost my family," she said softly. "Raiders burned our wagon 3 nights back. I've nowhere left to go. Can you give me shelter? Just till I can move again." Harlan's gaze swept over her, the torn dress, the blistered hands, the broken crutch. He shifted his weight, jaw tight. "Ma'am, I don't take in strangers. Not out here. Too many ways to get hurt." A flicker of shame crossed her face, quick as a shadow. "Then I'll go," she said, voice cracking but proud. "Just thought I'd try one last door before I fall." She turned, her crutch sinking into soft earth. But when she stumbled, catching herself with a faint gasp, Harlan's restraint snapped like brittle rope. "Wait." His boots thudded against the porch as he moved toward her. "You look like you ain't eaten in days. Come in. I got stew left from yesterday. Sit by the fire if you must." She nodded once, barely holding back tears. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar smoke and loneliness. Dust motes floated in the slant of light across the wooden floor. Harlan set a bowl before her and stood by the window, arms folded. Lydia ate in silence, each bite heavy with gratitude. The clock ticked steady, the sound filling what words could not. When she tried to pour water into her tin cup, her hands trembled, spilling some on the table. Harlan stepped forward, catching the cup before it fell. Their fingers brushed, a brief, delicate contact that startled them both. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and for the first time saw not a stranger, but a man burdened by his own ghosts. "You're kind," she whispered. His mouth twitched in something between a smile and pain. "Kindness don't come easy out here." The afternoon slipped into gold. Lydia sat by the hearth, her crutches leaning against the wall. Harlan chopped wood outside, each strike of the axe echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness. When night came, he handed her a blanket, but said nothing more. She thanked him and watched his shadow move about the room, quiet, cautious, uncertain. By morning, whispers had already begun to crawl across the town miles away. A crippled woman living in a cowboy's cabin. People needed no facts to build a story. When Harlan rode to fetch supplies, the storekeeper smirked. "You got yourself company, Harlan? Didn't think you was the charity sort." Harlan's jaw hardened. She needed a place to stand. Ain't much charity in that. But as he turned, he caught the tail end of laughter, sharp and cutting. A crippled woman and a lonely cowboy, perfect match for pity. He said nothing, though his hands curled into fists. When he returned home, Lydia saw the storm still clinging to him. "They talk about me," she said quietly, more statement than question. "They talk about what they don't understand," he answered, removing his hat. "Always have." She looked out the window toward the endless stretch of prairie. "Then let them. I've survived worse than words." For the first time, he smiled. Just a small thing, soft and fleeting, but it stayed with him long after she turned away. That night, when the wind howled, He sat by the fire, mending her broken crutch with careful hands. She woke to the sound, the faint glow of flame catching his face. "You don't have to," she murmured. "I know," he said, eyes on the wood. "Guess I just wanted to." Days passed quietly. Lydia began to fold sheets, wash dishes from her chair, hum old hymns that softened the cabin's emptiness. She insisted on pulling her own weight, even if her legs betrayed her. The air changed. What once smelled of smoke and sweat now carried the scent of bread and faint lilac from her handkerchief. Sometimes, when Harlan returned from the fields, he'd find her sitting outside, her skirt spread like spilled sunlight, reading aloud from a small, weathered Bible. She'd stumble over the verses, smiling at her own mistakes, and he'd sit near enough to listen, but not close enough to startle the quiet. One afternoon, he taught her to steady a rifle, his hands gently guiding hers. "Keep your breath low," he said, his voice low as a river under ice. "Don't fight the tremble. Just let it pass." She fired once, the shot echoing across the fields. She laughed, bright and surprised, the sound cracking through the solitude like dawn breaking. Another evening, she read him a line she loved. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted," she said softly. "Maybe that's why he found me your cabin." He looked at her for a long time, something tender stirring beneath the surface of his silence. "Maybe he found you here for both of us." By the seventh day, a windstorm swept across the plains. Lydia had hung laundry outside when the sky turned dark, the wind roaring sudden and mean. She hobbled forward, trying to pull the sheets down, but the gust caught her balance. Her crutch snapped, sending her crashing to the ground. The pain shot through her leg, white and fierce. Harlan heard her cry from inside. He burst through the door, the storm blinding him with dust and rain. She lay half buried in mud, her face pale, eyes wide with shame and fear. "I'm fine," she tried to say, but her voice broke. He knelt beside her, gathering her into his arms as thunder cracked overhead. Rain drenched them both, the world fading into a blur of sound and motion. "You don't have to keep me," she whispered through tears. "I know what they say. I know how this looks." He looked down at her, his face wet with more than rain. "Let him talk. They never had to see what I see." "And what's that?" "A woman braver than any man I've met." He carried her inside, setting her gently near the fire. Her hair clung to her cheeks, her hands trembling as he knelt beside her. The storm raged outside, lightning flashing through the windows, and for the first time, he let himself speak without fear. "You came to my door a skin for shelter," he said, voice unsteady. "Didn't know you'd build a home inside me." Lydia blinked, unable to breathe. "Harlan." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small silver ring, the only thing he'd kept from his mother. "If you'll stay," he said softly, "I'd be honored to give you more than a roof. I'd give you my name." Tears filled her eyes, blurring the firelight. "You'd want me? Like this?" He brushed a thumb against her cheek, his touch reverent. "I want you because of this. Because you kept walking when the world tried to break you." She covered her mouth, laughter and sobs mingling. "Then let the world talk," she whispered. "I'll stand beside you, even if I need crutches to do it." He slipped the ring on her finger. The fit was perfect, as if destiny had been carving that circle all along. The storm eased outside, thunder rolling away into the distance. Within the cabin, only the fire spoke, crackling, alive, like the heartbeat of something newly born. They sat there for a long time, hands clasped, faces close. He kissed her forehead, a silent promise between two wounded souls who had finally found their way home. By dusk, the sky cleared, leaving the prairie washed clean and gold once more. Lydia's laughter drifted out through the open window, soft as wind through wheat. Harlan stood behind her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, his eyes calm for the first time in years. Far off, the town would keep talking. They always did. But out here, beyond the reach of judgment, there was only light, and the steady rhythm of two hearts learning to heal in the same time. If an old soul were to pass by that way years later, they'd tell you they once saw a woman on crutches and a cowboy sitting close by her side, watching the sunset as if it had been painted just for them. And they'd say, Some hearts are forged from pain, some from mercy, but the rare ones are built from both. Out here where the land is cruel and wide, love ain't shouted loud. It's a quiet promise made beside the fire, a hand steadying another through the storm. And if you ever find yourself lost, thinking kindness has died out of men, remember Lydia and Harlan. Remember how she knocked on his door and how he opened it not just to her, but to the part of himself that had forgotten how to feel. The prairie wind carried their story away, soft and endless, over the fields that once watched them fall and rise again.